On this day, I'm especially grateful for our founder, George Pepperdine. You've heard from him in his own words, as read by our newest board members, Virginia Milstead and Eric Johnson. George Pepperdine's vision continues to inspire more than 80 years after the doors first opened. The tens of thousands of waves who have come and gone since that day have paved the way for us, for you and for me, and for the endless waves to come. Though they no longer walk this campus with us, those who have come before us belong to the timeless Pepperdine University family. You and I may have never met George Pepperdine personally, but we see all around us what one person's vision of creating something bigger than himself can lead to. Generations of leaders who share a common bond of purpose and a desire to serve the world. Last year's Founders Day was a special one for me. It doubled as my inauguration. I spoke then of the gratitude I have for the professors, staff members, and students in the Pepperdine community who had inspired and helped shape me. I looked forward to a year ahead and thought it held endless possibilities. Little did I know. Looking back now, it's easy to romanticize about how perfect things seemed to be before 2020. But that's an illusion. Even before our current challenges, we knew that many students already felt isolated, distant, divided, lonely. This is precisely why Pepperdine launched the RISE program, aimed at equipping our students to be resilient. We reject the hopeless idea that pandemic isolation and disconnectedness is unavoidable. We have faith that we will energize creative ways to connect and affirm one another so that we come out of this temporary trial stronger than ever. But the pandemic isn't the only challenge our communities are facing. The month of May brought long-simmering issues surrounding racial justice to a boil. I started my presidency knowing there was still much work to do in our society toward achieving racial harmony. I also knew I personally had so much to learn from the stories and perspectives of people whose individual experiences were different than mine. I desire to foster reconciliation and unity, but like every past leader of Pepperdine, I benefit tremendously from the gracious, constructive feedback of fellow Waves. I committed to listening and learning, partnering with the Black Student Association and the Pepperdine Student Affairs team to launch an initiative last fall that brought our student leaders together for a series of important conversations about how to build a community made up of people from so many different backgrounds and experiences. I also decided that we needed to hire and empower a Chief Diversity Officer to be a new member of the university's senior leadership team who would help us build a more unified community where every member felt loved and valued. In recent months, we've become even more committed to this pursuit, forming a presidential action advisory team made up of students, staff, and faculty to advise me on action steps we can take to become a more inclusive and loving community. I'm hopeful about our beginning, but we're only just beginning. We must continue to fight the lie that things can never really change, that the issues are too big and too hard. We must not shield our eyes, we must not turn away, because with God, all things are possible. God designed people to thrive in community, to be better together than apart, and to show love to every individual and to create a sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. I challenge each and every one of us to muster the courage it takes to create a community of belonging, the courage to reach out and love each other through differences and disagreements, and through difficulties and disappointments, because that's when the power to love is real, and that's where belonging is born. From day one, we've dreamed of a loving environment that created a sense of belonging and togetherness, but this has been a year unlike any other in Pepperdine's history. The month of March brought the COVID-19 pandemic to our doorstep. Suddenly, our campuses and classrooms became still and quiet. We were jolted from the familiarity, tradition, and comfort of our typical springtime routines. Spring break service trips, championship runs from our top-ranked sports teams, graduation ceremonies in Alumni Park. But as Pepperdine Waves, we know that we don't belong to a calendar routine or to a campus. We belong to God. Psalm 100 verse 3 says, "Know that the Lord is God. He made us, and we belong to Him." We belong to God. That's what God says. That's our starting point. Each of us has been created beautifully in the image of God. Why is this truth so important? Because this is our true and common heritage, a heritage that is preeminent and transcendent to all culture, gender, race, nationality, and background. This is our great unifying principle. We were created as one people, as God's people. Belonging is a basic human need, and God promises you and me that we already belong in the most important way possible. We belong to God. But it is also clear that God made us for relationships with each other, and He embedded a deep desire within us to be in community with each other. Just before His death, Jesus said to His disciples, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." Jesus gave His life as an example of how to love everyone, of how to remove barriers to belonging. Barriers keep people out. Belonging pulls people in. We can do this. If we reach out and draw in those who are left out, or kept out, or locked out, together we can bring open arms of welcome and belonging to every person at Pepperdine. If we aren't doing this, what's missing? Love. Maya Angelou put it beautifully when she wrote, "Love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, it leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope." Love does that. To many, the word love has become meaningless, tired, overused. So when looking for solutions, we may speed right past the most powerful idea, the most powerful gift, the most powerful force in the world, love. But what if love's true meaning was resurrected and reinvigorated? What if words and truths like selfless and sacrifice and humility and justice were the order of the day? Words and truths that reflect the light of love. A community that understands God's original design for love and that's committed to living together with love as its singular goal can overcome any challenge or conflict. You may have heard the following passage from 1 Corinthians 13 at a wedding, but it wasn't written for a wedding. It was written as God's original design for love. Imagine what would happen if each of us chose to love as God defines it. Imagine if our community was known for this. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Love never fails. Let me say that last line again. Love never fails. Why does our love for each other never fail? Because it's guided by the hand of God. Just a few minutes ago, you heard the opening lines of George Pepperdine's dedicatory address. He said, "What we say here today in the dedication of these buildings is of very little importance. But the work which will be done through the days and years and generations to come will be of very great importance if that work is guided by the hand of God." There can be no mistake that the hand of God is guiding Pepperdine. What we know to be true about Pepperdine is that we belong to God. We belong. You belong. But this belonging is a sacred trust. It is sacred because it requires us to live out the love of Christ with one another, to build a kingdom of God community where every single person is deeply valued as a child of God. It's a trust because it requires all of us to work together, and I know we will. Even after a difficult year, I still look forward to the future, to the intellectual and spiritual growth we'll experience together, to the students who will become alumni, and to the children who will someday become waves, and to the communities worldwide that will be positively impacted by the service and leadership of waves like you. May God bless us, may God protect us, and may God pour out His blessings on Pepperdine.